Hello and welcome to an ABC 57 News, Your Voice, Your Vote primary election special, everyone. I'm Brian Conybeare. Tonight we're inside the Education and Arts Building at Indiana University South Bend for a South Bend mayoral debate sponsored by the League of Women Voters of the South Bend area, the American Democracy Project here at IU South Bend, and we are very happy to have a live audience join us for this Democratic primary debate tonight. Welcome, everyone. Greatly appreciate your all being here, though we have asked the audience to be respectful and hold their applause until the end of the event. So, let's meet the candidates. First, we welcome incumbent James Mueller. The 40-year-old is serving his first term in office as South Bend mayor after being elected to replace his friend and political mentor Pete Buttigieg in 2020. Mr. Mueller has a bachelor's degree from the University of Notre Dame and a PhD in oceanography from the University of Delaware. Welcome, sir. We also welcome challenger City Councilman Henry Davis Jr. Mr. Davis is 40 years old and was first elected to the South Bend Common Council in 2005 at the age of 25. He is now serving his third term on the council and has served as the longtime president of the LaSalle Park Neighborhood Association. He earned a bachelor's degree from Earlham College in Richmond, Indiana. Thank you for being here as well, sir. The winner of this Democratic Party primary will face the Republican Desmond Upchurch come November for the right to take over the mayor's seat. The order for the opening and closing statements was agreed to by both campaigns prior to tonight's debate. Mr. Davis, you are up first. You have 1 minute for your opening statement, sir.
Absolutely. Thank you all for coming out here. I appreciate ABC 57 for televising this live for people that couldn't make it out and didn't choose to come out. We are at a critical moment in South Bend. Look, our crime rate is really high. We're rated #1 in the state of Indiana as it relates to the most violent cities. Our tax base is dwindling. Our school corporation is folding right before our eyes. Our children are living in very hostile environments, and we do nothing. We shell our money out to the wealthy. We give them tax benefits and tax credits for projects that, quite frankly, are taking over our downtown area. Our neighborhoods are riddled. We don't have homes. We suffered through a 1,000 houses in 1,000 days program that has not been replaced. None of the houses have been replaced. Look, South Bend deserves more. I believe in South Bend. I'm running for mayor because I love South Bend. I'm running for mayor because South Bend is home to me. We can do better, and I know we can do better with the Davis administration.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, you have 1 minute for your opening statement, sir.
All right, thank you, and good evening, South Bend. It is an honor and privilege to serve my hometown as mayor. In face of headwinds, we've built on our progress, and South Bend has turned a corner. We have seen and attracted record investment in our city. We've had the fastest population growth since 1960. We've invested in our neighborhoods all across the city, including those forgotten in the past. But we can't stop now. We have much work left to do. And that's why I'm running for mayor, to make sure that we can build on our progress and we can take South Bend to new heights together. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Time now for our first round of questions, all of them provided by the League of Women Voters, the American Democracy Project, and local voters themselves. Each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to each question, and there will be 30-second rebuttals if the first candidate needs to respond in any way. Candidates, you will see the time cards right there. You know where they're at. Question number 1, and we begin with Henry Davis Jr. What is the most important issue facing the city of South Bend right now, and how will you address it as mayor if elected?
You know what is very difficult, naming one. We have so many. School corporation folding, right? And so that has been one that has created a climate within the city of South Bend that has told people not to invest here, don't bring your families here, don't bring your kids here. And as a matter of fact, don't move your business here because we can't educate kids. The other one obviously is crime. Crime has been a best friend of this administration. As a matter of fact, we continue to look at the crime stats, and that #1 rated city in the state of Indiana over and over again. The FBI puts us ahead of Chicago when it comes to crime. The city of South Bend lacks a lot of leadership at the top. We have to reimagine what South Bend looks like and how South Bend is supposed to operate. How do we collaborate? How do we build? How do we expand a tax base? So I think my answer would be a lack of vision and a lack of leadership would be my answer, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, your take on the biggest issue in the city of South Bend right now and what you'll do if you're reelected?
Sure, we're struggling to win a battle for our kids' hearts and souls. We know gun violence is taking over our community just like it's taken over other cities in our country. And so that has been a top focus of my administration since day one, public safety. Earlier today, we swore in 16 new officers, and that will bring us up to full staffing for the first time in many years. We're also doing longer-term investments into our kids, into pre-K, expanding pre-K spots by 500 in our city in partnership with schools and the United Way. Among other things, interventions with folks that are causing the violence. But we know a critical piece of this is that the ready access to firearms. And we need help from our higher levels of government, state and federal levels, to make sure that this country, our city, doesn't continue to turn into the Wild West. Just last year, the state turned to a permitless carry system, and we saw shootings tick up in the second half of the year when that took effect.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you both. What skills and experiences qualify you best to serve as mayor? Mr. Mueller, we'll start with you this time.
I know what it takes to be mayor. We've in the past 3+ years, we've battled a once-in-a-century pandemic. We've battled once-in-50-year record inflation. And through it all, we've been able to build on our progress, and we're stronger today than we were 3+ years ago. So the experience being mayor, until you're in the seat, I didn't fully appreciate it, even though I had worked in the previous administration closely with the previous mayor. But until you're in the seat and have to make the decisions, and you have to, you don't no longer look to someone else. You can't armchair quarterback. You can't second guess. You have to make the decision, and you have to own it. And so until you're there, it's not quite the same. That's the experience that I bring, is what we've done the last 3 years and the progress you see all around us.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, what about your skills and experiences qualify you?
I've been a city councilman, as you said before, and it says 2005 in your paper, but it's 2008. I got elected in 2007. And I also have a master's degree from Bethlehem University here as well. And so what this conversation is about is the lack of accountability. My opponent swears that we have done better. No one here has benefited from whatever that better is. As a matter of fact, we understood before Mayor Mueller became mayor this past 4 years ago, he didn't want to be mayor. He's told people that he doesn't want to be mayor. He only wanted one term, and here we are signing up for another term. He's completely absent when it comes to our council meetings. He does not protrude an image that says that he wants to be mayor. We're scared for our city. Yes, we have gun violence, but we need leadership. Yes, we have a pre-K program, but the kids won't even be able to make it to elementary school because we're closing all our schools. So the idea of South Bend and what we're really working on is really working on trying to find another place to live. This is not working for us. We have to do better.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, would you like a rebuttal there, since he addressed you specifically?
Sure. Like I said, we have the fastest population growth since 1960. We have the most private investment in our entire city's history coming our way. Part 1 crimes, which are the most significant crimes in our city, were down 12% last year from the previous year, and down 11% from 2019. So from 2019 and to last year, Part 1 crimes were down 11%.
Thank you, sir. Several recent issues, including the Civilian Police Review Board that is still not in place, a mental health crisis center still being discussed, and cooperation between the clerk's office, the Common Council on meetings, agendas, and more have caused concerns and controversy recently. How will you each ensure effective communication with other elected officials as well as transparency with the public if you are elected? Mr. Davis.
I do it now. Those policies that you just spoke about, I was the author of the Citizens Review Board. We started it back in 2014. We finally got it passed a couple years ago. Still hasn't been implemented, but we did get it passed. The crisis intervention unit that we've been asking about, that we talked about, we absolutely pushed that through, myself and another colleague of mine on the South Bend City Council. But it's not enough, right? We have to continue on with making sure we are enforcing those things, implementing those things, and funding them. Right now, this administration has refused to implement the Citizens Review Board. We need it. He's refused to ensure mental health crisis intervention unit, said that we don't need it. As a matter of fact, this past summer, we saw the death of Dante Cottrell. We understood that Dante Cottrell was having a mental breakdown. We met him with bullets, and then we turn around and tell our kids not to shoot people. Dante Cottrell wanted and needed help. And I want to say hello to Dante Cottrell's mother, who's here today. She needs a hand for what she has gone through. And look, I'm going to tell you myself, I'm sorry from the city of South Bend. I am sorry that you have gone through this, and I honor you and your family. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And that deserves a hand of applause for her. Thank you.
Moving, Mayor Mueller, how will you ensure effective communication with other elected officials as well as transparency with the public?
Well, first, I think Mr. Davis has confused me with the county Republicans. Those recall that we helped make the crisis center happen here locally early this year when the county Republicans reneged on their promise for the mental health crisis center. But overall, we have a great working relationship with our elected officials, the council leadership. I can't do, and the city can't do what it needs to do without the help of our county council, and it's a team effort. That's the way our system has been set up. There's an executive branch, there's a legislative branch, and we've got to work together. And that's exactly what we've done, and that's how we've been able to deliver all of the progress that you see around you, and that's all of the progress that's yet to come. And as I said, there are so many projects in the pipeline right now in neighborhoods across the city, including those that have been forgotten in the past. It's an exciting time to be in South Bend, and I'm excited to have the team around us to help us move forward.
Thank you, sir. Next question. What's the best way to curb crime in South Bend? Should we increase police staffing further, buy more technology and increase budgets, or redirect resources away from policing? Mr. Mueller, we'll start with you this time.
Well, this is a false choice that we've been presented over the last few years, is you have to choose whether to invest in our people or whether to make sure that we have adequate resources for our public safety and law enforcement officers. In South Bend, during my administration, we've done both. We've made record investments into social infrastructure and into our people, into our kids. At the same time, we've also been bold with getting resources for our officers, having new pay increases. Where other departments are seeing shortages, we're going to be fully staffed this summer. We've also embraced 21st century policing practices, which is both on the technology side. We've opened up a real-time crime center, as well as on the policies, making sure that we are doing the job the best way possible, making sure that we're doing it in a fair and impartial way. So we've invested in both our police as well as our community, and that's the way it should be.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, your take on the best way to curb crime in South Bend.
Well, it's not doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. What we're experiencing is a battle with people who are insane when it comes to crime. We have to invest in people. We have to invest in neighborhoods. We have to rebuild our neighborhoods. The crime plan that we have right now looks like Ronald Reagan wrote it. We need an idea of how this is going to work for us. And $3 million for a facial recognition system that unfairly targets African Americans and people of color is outrageous. Those people need investing, they need investment, they need better neighborhoods, and they certainly need better housing.
Thank you, sir. Deadly shootings, unfortunately, are up over the past few years in the city. A security guard was recently shot and killed inside a city-owned parking garage in the heart of downtown. So what, if anything, can a mayor do to address the issue of local gun violence? And what steps would you take to make South Bend residents safer? This time we'll start with Mr. Davis.
One thing that we did some years ago, we put a police substation in downtown South Bend. They have a substation in Industry Commons. We need to have police in areas where there are higher rates of crime because that's where the crime is happening at. We need a better relationship with our officers. So that's one thing. The other thing that we can do to help reduce crime, we can begin to look at programming that's across America. There's a program that's out of California, where over 50% of the crimes that were committed through gun violence has been reduced. We should adopt that type of program. We should adopt those plans. We have to think outside the box, but we cannot continue to add more and more police to this problem. This problem has everything to do with economics and the social status of many of our South Bend residents.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, what do you think? What can a mayor do to address local gun violence?
Well, I mentioned what the mayor can't do, so we'll start that really quickly, is when there are guns all around us and it's turning into a Wild West where a simple argument can turn into a fatality. We need to have common sense gun control measures in our city, but that's not in the jurisdiction of the mayor. What the mayor can do, however, is make sure that, one, we have the system in which there is hope in our community, and that our community is delivering and receiving a loving message, because a lot of these senseless acts of violence are occurring really for just the most ridiculous of reasons. And so we've got to reach the hearts and minds and win them over of our people. And of course, we want to offer those opportunities so that our residents know there is hope, there is opportunity for them going forward. They don't have to choose a path of violence. But of course, if they do not choose to take those better paths of opportunity and hope, we need to come down and make sure we stop them and we take violent offenders off the streets.
Thank you, sir. We mentioned the Police Community Review Board briefly, and it really kind of took on new life after the deadly police shooting of Eric Logan back in 2019, and it is still not fully up and running. So do you think South Bend has made progress improving police-community relations, and what steps should be taken to strengthen that relationship moving forward? Mr. Mayor, let's start with you this time.
Well, we've made a lot of progress. Last 3 years, we've worked with the community to revise our use of force policy, ensuring that deadly force should be used only as a last resort, as well as prioritizing de-escalation tactics and training to make sure that we can avoid those kind of encounters whenever possible. We've also implemented with the community a progressive discipline matrix so that our officers know if they commit certain offenses or violate policies, this is the consequences that they're going to face. We've worked on other pieces as well, including we're still soon to have a civilian review board up and running. We know the Common Council is getting close to sending me some recommendations for the director, and as soon as they deliver those to me, I will get moving as quickly as possible.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, what do you think about police-community relations in the city?
They need to improve, and we have the tools, we have the creativity, we have the smarts to improve them. A Citizens Review Board obviously would have done that. We spent well over a year working with the community to put together legislation, meaningful legislation that everyone could be happy with or be proud of. Once that legislation made it to where it should be, and there was some turbulence along the way, nothing has happened. We have not lived the South Bend that this mayor is talking about. Again, we're number one in crime. The crime is just not on the west side. The crime has moved over to the Conybeare neighborhoods. Folks over there are being robbed. Folks are breaking into their homes. I have no idea how we can talk about how great it is when every day we turn on the TV and somebody has been murdered. Somebody just died, I think it was the day before yesterday, am I correct? And so we're doing well, but somebody drops dead in the middle of the street.
Thank you, sir. There are longstanding concerns about economic development outside of downtown South Bend. So if elected, what steps will you take to ensure economic growth and development is more widely distributed on the west and southeast sides of the city as well? Mr. Davis, let's start with you this time.
You know, one thing would be great is if we were to stop doing the same sort of interaction with the banks that we work with. South Bend has used a First Source Bank for decades as it relates to where we put our money at, and as well as, I'm talking about taxpayers' dollars, as well as Key Bank. We need to start looking at different banks that will produce the fundings that we need for loans for small businesses. We need to put money in those banks so they can produce monies for loans for home equity or even to build a home or to buy a home. We have to do things differently in order to see a different South Bend. We can't do the same thing that we've been doing, because that's going to continue to lead us and land us in the positions that we have been. So economic development and making sure economic development happens, it has to be more accessible to the folks who need it the most.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, what do you think? Economic development outside of downtown, do we need to focus on that more?
Well, absolutely. Like I said, we've seen progress in neighborhoods across the city, and that does take a focused and committed effort to deliver both funding from the public sector, as well as getting our private partners interested into these other neighborhoods. Because on almost everything that we do, we depend on partnership with whether it's a nonprofit to deliver services or a private partner to invest in developing either new housing or new commercial space or new industry. So these partnerships are critical, and they're looking, you know, if you're a private investor, you're going to look at where it makes sense for you, where your workers are, where the market makes sense for you. And so South Bend, when just over 10 years ago, when it was named a dying city, it was the entire city was not seen as a place to invest in. Now we're seeing record investment in our city, which is a good thing. And as we go forward, we want to make sure that those benefits are seen across the entire city.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, you were shaking your head. Do you want a rebuttal there?
Oh, absolutely. Again, no one's living this reality. South Bend needs investment in all corners. Yes, it does. But the areas that we are seeing the most crime definitely needs this investment. We cannot continue to put a blind eye to all of the homicides, all the robberies, we have children that are fighting at basketball games now. And so those children are carrying a level of anger because their neighborhoods are not producing the type of life that's conducive to positive growth. And we cannot continue to ignore that. This administration says we're doing well, and every day we turn on the TV, we're living a nightmare here in South Bend. We can talk about numbers all you want. People are not numbers, they're people, and they deserve to be treated with humanity and dignity.
Thank you, sir. The city certainly has seen success developing the area around Four Winds Field, home of the South Bend Cubs, of course. So what are your plans to attract more businesses and investment into South Bend, and what specific kind of investment do you think the city needs most? Mr. Davis, let's start with you this time.
We need partnerships as it relates to Four Winds Field. I was going to call it Kobaleski. I'm dated, right? We need to make sure that the housing authority, which is across the street, receives the amount of money that they deserve, the investment they deserve, so those apartments can get back online, so they can be a part of the expansion of the ballpark. We have to bring in outside folks who are able to invest in such an arena. I think the gentleman who owns the Cubs, I think he will be ripe for this opportunity. He has many business connects across the globe, and if we are able to share not only that or see that as a positive image of growth for the city, we can make sure that the entire city shares in that growth as well.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, what do you think? What kind of businesses and investment should South Bend attract at this point in time?
Well, what we need to do is build off of the workforce that we have here, as well as the workforce that is likely to move to South Bend. And so, you know, one of the most critical investments we can be making is not necessarily in the businesses themselves, but in housing. Because as I've mentioned, you've heard a couple times, we're growing at the fastest rate than we have in many decades. And so we need more housing units. We are, in the last 3 years and currently, we have either already built or in progress or have funded 1,500 housing units across the city. But we need to build more. And a quarter of those are affordable housing units. So we need a spectrum of housing from both affordable to market rate to bring in the workforce, because we know businesses today are looking for workers. It's not workers or people following smokestacks anymore. Economic development is about the employers following the people.
Thank you, sir. A well-known city developer named Dave Matthews opened an upscale apartment building in downtown recently, but he didn't deliver on a full-fledged grocery store at the site that was promised as part of the development. The city's now trying to claw back some of the $5 million in tax incentives that helped make the development possible. And he's not the only one who has done this kind of thing. So what are your views on tax abatements and other financial support from taxpayers for developers? And how should the city hold companies accountable if they do not fulfill their contractual promises? Mayor Mueller, let's start with you this time.
Sure. These are public-private partnerships. As I said, for many years, we weren't receiving that kind of a private investment into the city. We weren't seeing developments going up in downtown or anywhere in the city. And so it does take private-public partnerships to make these projects pencil out and for them to happen. But whenever we do enter into one of these partnerships, we want to see public benefits that come along with these investments. And so all of these have written agreements and promises that a developer makes as part of their ability to receive public support to make the project go. And in some cases, the developer does not meet those obligations, and that's something that we have to take seriously. When the public invests and goes into a partnership, we expect the commitments to be met.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Davis, your take on taxpayer financial support for developers, and what if they don't fulfill their contract obligations?
Look, I have always advocated for project labor agreements, community benefit agreements, because those are the ways that we can help produce an economic multiplier effect for the city when such an investment is made. I just lost it. Could you repeat the question again?
That's okay. It was about what kind tax abatements in particular, and how do you hold companies responsible?
And so within that, we have to enforce the law. The law is not being enforced. Dave Matthews was made to be a spectacle. And I resent that happened to him only. There are several other companies that are out of compliance with their tax abatement agreements. But we direct anger and direct our economic ills and woes towards Dave Matthews. Dave Matthews needs to be accountable for what he has gotten from the city and the taxpayers. However, if we're going to treat him like that, we need to treat everyone else like that.
Thank you, sir. The South Bend Common Council is putting together a special committee to address possible reparations for the African American community in South Bend. What is your stance on reparations, and what specific form do you think those reparations should take if they do in fact happen? Mr. Davis, let's start with you this time.
I'm glad we're talking about it. Look, again, my legislation. We need to make sure that reparations are reflective of what needs to happen here in South Bend. I think people got off on the wrong foot when they started talking about reparations because they felt like that we were talking about writing checks. And as a matter of fact, the city of San Francisco, California, they're writing checks. They're talking about writing $5 million checks. I don't know if that's a benefit, but what I do believe and think that we need to go back to where the city of South Bend engaged in such neglectful and racist tactics when it came to redlining, because that's where the conversation came from. We want to make sure that those places that were redlined and drawn out of the economic benefit system that we have here in America are placed back in. We have to correct some of the social and economic ills of our past. If we don't, again, we're going to continue to get the same thing over and over again. That's the reparations conversation that I'm willing to have. We need to give people the ability to have an opportunity here in this city. A lot of people have been locked out.
Thank you, Councilman Davis. Mr. Mueller, your take on reparations and what form should they take if they are approved?
Yeah, I think we need to be very careful, and as we move forward in this conversation, we need to identify the specific harms that different levels of government have caused different communities. So there's harms that are done to multiple different communities, so we got to be careful how to make it fair, how to make sure that we're doing something in the right way and getting to a more just system here, but not causing a new unfairness. So, if people move out of the city, for example, at the city level, someone moves out of the city, do they no longer qualify for harms if you identify harms that the city has done? Of course, we know big resources are at the state and federal levels, and so we do want them to partake in this as well. But here locally, I support what Common Council President Sharon McBride has put forth, a commission headed by Dr. Darrell Heller. I can't think of a more thoughtful or constructive person to lead these discussions, and I look forward to the recommendations.
Mr. Davis, you were shaking your head there. Do you want a 30-second rebuttal?
Look, that's my bill. That's my baby, right? And so delay. Let's try to find out how slavery impacted black people. Let's figure out how black people are living now based upon the fact that they don't have any wealth in their community. Let's see how Latin America lives. You understand what I'm saying? We want to delay, and then we're going to go find other black people to head these committees to make us feel comfortable that some work is being done. It's not being done. We're delaying the action. And anyone here should have an insult level that has just probably reached its top, because we keep delaying the economic benefit for the entire city of South Bend. That just doesn't help the black community, and that helps the entire city of South Bend.
Thank you, sir. Tenants have voiced concerns about a lack of quality, affordable housing in South Bend. What would you do as mayor to ensure more safe, affordable housing is available to people across the city? Mr. Mueller, let's start with you this time.
Sure, and that's something, as I identified earlier, is the biggest piece of our economic development strategy. There's two pieces you've seen we've been working on, is making sure this is a place people want to live, work, and play, and visit. So all of the public places, parks, libraries, those investments have been building our placemaking and quality of life components to our city. But then the other side is housing. We need places for people to live. And again, we need housing across the board. And so even when we're investing in market rate housing, the more housing you have available, there's been plenty of studies on this, does keep prices down across the board. So it's a simple supply and demand equation here. So we need housing across the board. And of course, we do need to make significant investments into affordable housing as well. And as I said, of the 1,500 units constructed or underway, about a quarter of them are affordable.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Davis, your take on affordable housing.
It hasn't happened. Just this past Monday, we had a council meeting. And there was I think it was Far West Northwest Neighborhood Association had $250,000 that was allocated for housing. They were going to be working as a neighborhood organization to build affordable housing. The mayor sent the request into the council to ask for that money back so he can throw it into the general revenue fund. That neighborhood is one of the poorest census tracts in the city of South Bend, made up of a lot of people of color, and they were asking for help, and we didn't get help. At the same time, we sat and we approved 3 to 4 different tax abatements worth millions of dollars over the next 10 years for rich white developers. He said nothing. I don't know how you can continue to applaud affordable housing when you take affordable housing for the very people that need it the most.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, would you like a 30-second rebuttal on that one?
I'd just say we're investing record amounts in affordable housing. We were fortunate to partner with developers to get 3 tax credits from the state for affordable housing, and these are the first tax credit projects that we've received in a number of years. And so we are being very aggressive, but we can't, we can't do everything. We don't have the resources to instantly snap our fingers and make affordable housing units appear, but we've got a lot coming on the way.
Thank you, sir. St. Joseph County is considering closing Portage Manor permanently and moving more than 100 disabled residents elsewhere. This is a county-run facility. It's not owned or operated by the city. But what is your stance on the possible closure of Portage Manor and the future of those residents? Mr. Davis?
A sad day in America, a sad day in South Bend, Indiana. We need facilities. We actually need more facilities like that are going to help some of our mentally challenged neighbors. We need a clinic for our LGBTQA+ community. We need to attack this on all fronts. Every community that deserves a mental health facility, whether it's outpatient or inpatient, they deserve it. We should get it to them as soon as possible. We have to evolve in the way that we go about serving our community. That's just one entity, that's just one building, that's just one business. We have to do better than just one. We have the ability to build more and service the community where it needs to be and deserves to be serviced at.
Mr. Mueller, what's your take on the closure of Portage Manor and what happens to those residents?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the county, the new county government that's now controlled by a new Republican majority has, in my view, rushed into this. But thankfully, it appears last night they have given 60 days to come up with potential solutions to maintain the services for those residents and keep Portage Manor intact. But this is critical that we work together as a community to put that successful way forward together in the next 60 days and save these services, because these are people's homes. And one thing you never want to have as a government, I mean, this is seemingly an act of cruelty to come in, you follow an election, you come in to office, and we've been studying this, they've been studying this for years, to come in right away and say it's got to close. I mean, we've got to be careful to make sure that maybe it does have to close someday, but we got to make sure that every option has been explored first.
Thank you, sir. Let's change subjects for a moment. How can the city of South Bend address climate change concerns? Specifically, what local actions can the city play in solving this global problem? Mr. Mueller, let's start with you this time.
Sure, we've tried to make some targeted investments here locally to do our part to combat climate change. We have a climate action plan that I believe we can strengthen over the coming years. But in the meantime, we've also been making investments with partners, putting helping to incentivize solar and energy efficiency for our nonprofits in the area. And this is good for a number of reasons. It not only saves us from carbon emissions going into the atmosphere, but it also saves our nonprofit agencies in the area dollars that would go into energy costs. Now they can reinvest those savings back into their core missions into the community. And so this is one way, and I believe we are getting close to about 0.5 megawatt of solar from that program. But we also, a lot of energy policy is controlled at the state level. And it's something I worked on before. It's not the federal level as much, and it's not the local level. A lot of energy policy is at the state level, so we need to work with our state lawmakers to get the right policies in place.
Thank you. Councilman Davis, what's your take on local action to address climate change?
Yeah, you said local. My counterpart here keeps putting it on the state or the federal government. Look, we need leadership in this, right? So I believe climate change can be addressed in the ways that he was just illustrating to us. But we have to demolish buildings safely and disproportionately, poor neighborhoods. We have to address toxic and lead in poor neighborhoods. We have to create equitable electric vehicle infrastructure. And I actually worked at the state level with some folks from the NAACP and different organizations to improve how we can get electric vehicles in urban areas. We can't have EV stations just circling around Notre Dame. We have to make it plentiful across the city of South Bend. Engage our local college students in this discussion. And listen to the experts. I think the experts share at a higher level of information than we do. But obviously, our dependency on fossil fuel is changing, and we obviously need to start moving forward with the electric vehicle thing.
Thank you very much. Homelessness has been an issue in the city for several years, and the homeless population across the state is actually rising these days, up 3% since 2020. How would you rate the city's current response to the issue of homelessness, and what would you do about it if elected? Mr. Davis, let's start with you this time.
Absolutely. I sponsored a bill for the Homeless Bill of Rights, and this administration rejected it. I wrote another bill as it relates to the homelessness that took place last summer when homeless residents were walking around downtown and, more importantly, in the Monroe Park area. And the only thing that we could do was call the police on them. They're poor. You don't call the police on poor people. They need help. What else we can do? Our tent cities should not be met with cops. We deserve permanent supportive housing with proven service providers. And if we don't address these issues are going to continue to get worse and worse. Homelessness is indicative, and it's a direct link to our lack of economics here in this area. The opportunities are not there, and we have to expand opportunities to all people.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, your take on homelessness. What can be done about it here in the city?
Well, in the city, we've adopted housing first as a principle. And so the key strategy there is not having preconditions on folks who are unhoused in our streets before providing them housing. The idea is you get them sheltered first and then bring around wraparound services to get them the help they need, because you get them out of crisis from the streets, that is more successful for them moving forward than making them meet criteria before providing those services. So in the past few years, we've built about 100 permanent supportive housing units here in South Bend. We're working with partners to build more in the coming years. We're also working with partners to build a low barrier intake center. Right now, there's the Motels for Now. We're in conversations there as well. Now that our county partners have decided to abandon that program, working with them to see how to continue that to bridge us into a permanent new low barrier shelter.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Davis, you were shaking your head there. Did you want a rebuttal?
Absolutely. We have the agencies to do this already. If this administration thought enough of the South Bend Housing Authority, we'll be halfway there. HUD has a number of programs that we can invest into that can bring reinvestment to our neighborhoods. But again, the Housing Authority looks like a closed-up store on Sundays, but it has boards in front of it. It's in our downtown area. I have no idea why we don't have any urgency to take care of the Housing Authority and ensure that we employ all of the resources that the Housing Authority and federal government can give to the city of South Bend. I have no idea. We have the agencies to do it.
Thank you, sir. The city has agreed to buy the South Bend Community School Corporation headquarters downtown, and the district is considering another round of school closures due to lower enrollment. What role, if any, do you think city government should play in helping improve the South Bend community schools? Mr. Mueller, let's start with you.
Sure. We know even though the school corporation is entirely separate from city government and the mayor's office, it's critical that we maintain a close partnership, because strong schools and strong neighborhoods go hand in hand. We know they face a lot of headwinds from the state level in terms of every time they do something to move the ball forward, the state legislature seems to pull the rug out from under them in response. And so they're making do with a lot of challenges. But what's critical is we've got to figure out how to partner. So we've been partnering on making sure there's expanded pre-K access to our kids, working on a career center with them, and figuring out how best to navigate what happens, in after-school programming, summer programming, and all of those things.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Davis, what do you think about improving the South Bend schools? Does the city have a role there?
We absolutely have a role. There's our city. And for anyone that was an elected official that doesn't believe that we have to save our school corporation, reinvest in our school corporations, probably should not be an elected official. The only way that the city grows if our public school corporation is actually doing the job of educating our kids, keeping the schools open, and making sure people are coming out of there with degrees and diplomas and ready to work in the city of South Bend. If we do not tackle that idea, our unemployment rate will continue to go higher. Our crime rate will continue to get higher, and we will continue to suffer the same type of erosion of tax base that we continue to suffer from. We have to get involved. Back in 2009, I wrote the bill that connected the school corporation to the South Bend Common Council. The last and the only few meetings that we had was because I pushed for those discussions. We need a seat at the table with the school board and also with the school superintendent. We have to figure out what we're going to move forward with. We have to create an identity for our city, and we're going to have to figure out what the industry that we're going to go forward with, given the fact that our school corporation is on board with us.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to another issue, transportation. The South Shoreline is starting its double tracking project and designing a new station at the South Bend International Airport to reduce travel time to downtown Chicago to about 90 minutes. What will you do if you're elected to use that development to attract more young professionals and families to South Bend without pricing out or displacing current residents. Mr. Davis, what do you think about that? South Shore double tracking?
It sounds like a great idea. It is a great idea. Why not? We can get from to and from Chicago a lot faster. Folks can take on jobs in Chicago and bring their money back from Chicago and spend it here in South Bend, Indiana. We welcome that. I welcome that. But one thing, I'm not sure that can happen. And the reason why I'm sure that it can happen is because of the level of crime that we present to the world. We can't do it because we present tragically divestment of city neighborhoods. We have a school corporation that's currently folding. And so these ideas of, grandeur that we want to bring into the city of South Bend can't happen until we take care of some of the kitchen table issues. And those kitchen table issues are the ones that are harming us. We can't go and start spending gobs and gobs of money to bring folks in from Chicago because South Bend is cool. South Bend is not cool. The FBI said it's not cool. It says it's very violent and very hot. And so the idea of going back and forth about a double track program does not benefit the residents of South Bend that live here right now.
Mr. Mueller, your take on the double track project and bringing more people to the city without displacing the current residents?
So, I think it's critical. There are two separate projects that are under consideration here. There's the double tracking that's underway, and that's mostly by Michigan City to make sure it's called double tracking, so both tracks, they don't have to stop and wait as the other side goes by. So that will shave off a significant amount of time from the commute from South Bend to Chicago. And that's all happening, already funded, underway over in Michigan City. The other thing being considered here locally is the relocation of how it enters, either going to the west side of the airport or coming downtown South Bend. As the city of South Bend, we believe trains are meant to go from downtown to downtown. So our position is we would love to see it come downtown. The cost of relocating it to the west side of the airport has gone up quite substantially. And so now the differences between going to the west side of the airport and downtown aren't quite as much as previously estimated. But we've got to work with our partners, the operator that runs the South Shore line, as well as partners in the county, the airport, et cetera, to figure out what the best path forward is for that second piece of where does the station go.
Mr. Davis, what's your take on that? Where should that new South Shore station go in South Bend?
Well, it shouldn't go through an Ardmore neighborhood. And that's where the plans were being figured out at. Do we do it? Look, again, what are our priorities? I'm not understanding the issue of double tracking. I'm not understanding the issue of figuring out how we can bring people here that don't live here, that may not never want to live here. We're not taking care of what's supposed to be taken care of as it relates to home. Again, crime, school corporation, divestment in neighborhoods. We can keep going with these issues. I don't have a lot to say. That's as much as I want to say, because those other things, they're imaginative projects that no one from the city of South Bend could ever benefit from. We have to pay for that. And we're paying dearly with the issues that are before us right now.
Thank you, sir. Let's talk infrastructure for a moment. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the city's infrastructure, and what are your plans to move that number higher if you're elected? Mr. Davis, let's start with you this time.
It's something that my wife and I talk about all the time because I always come home with a bent rim or some busted tires. That has happened to me, I don't know, more than 4 times over the last 4 years. We need larger investment infrastructure. This administration put forth a plan at the beginning of its term to pave all of these streets because it was the great thing, the right thing to do. And guess what? I agree. But the amount of erosion that's taking place on many of those roads should probably never been paved or been paved with better grade of pavement and asphalt. We have to invest in our infrastructure. We have to give people an idea that they belong here, but we value them here. We're not valuing people when we shut down our major corridors to 2 lanes. We're not valuing the people that live here when we see potholes that are riddled through the entire downtown area. There's a major hole right down in front of the water company. It's been there for 2 weeks. No one wants to take care of it. I called the street department. They didn't go out.
Will you give me a number on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best?
I give it a 9. 9.5.
Infrastructure 9.5, 10 is good.
No, on my list of priorities, I'm sorry. So it's the opposite.
Infrastructure.
Yeah, I'm rating infrastructure. Oh, 3.
Mr. Mueller, your take. How would you rate the city's infrastructure, and what would you like to do about it if reelected?
Well, if we're talking just about streets, we go out every year and rate every segment of street in the city from 1 to 10 conveniently, and we're about around 6 plus or minus given how things happen each year. We're looking to move that number higher with the record investments in street funding. We've on track to pave over 185 miles of roads over the course of this term, which is significantly more than we've done in the past. And we know as a city and as a state in the country that in infrastructure, we need to do better on our infrastructure, not just our streets, our digital infrastructure. We need to make sure that folks have access to high-speed internet and equally across our city and communities, because that is the pathway to opportunity in our economy. And so we're also working to take advantage of the federal infrastructure bill, record investment, bipartisan in Washington, nonetheless. And so, we're excited to take advantage of those resources and expand the opportunities here in South Bend.
Can I get you to give me a rating on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, the city's infrastructure right now?
I told you the streets were about a 6
Okay.
on the 1 to 10 scale. So that's the objective number.
There you go. All right.
Well, we feel 3 as residents. 6 could be an average, right? We feel the 3. We feel the 2. We feel the 1. The streets that I ride up and down, and it's just not the west side, it's all over the city, it's potholes. I had a resident that come to me at a community meeting, and he said, why can't the city fix the manhole covers or make sure they're flush with the streets? You pave the street, and then next thing you know, you ride over a manhole cover, and now again, you destroyed your front end of your car. So, or broke your shock, or messed up something in your driving system. So, no, we have to do better. We really have to do better. And we cannot continue to depend upon some idea that we are doing better. We're not doing better.
Similar question here, and I'm asking you for another number. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the public transportation system in South Bend? And what would you do to move that number higher if you were elected? Mr. Davis?
The public transportation sector in South Bend, it's weak. I will give it probably a 3 or a 4. Now, look, that's not because those folks over there are not doing their job. We have to look at investing in our public transportation system, and we have to start looking at a 24-hour bus route to help bring in employers. We can't continue with the status quo in the same business as per the usual. Our public transportation system is a route for people who are in poverty to get out of poverty. In my district alone right now, we've shut down 2 bus routes where you have the highest concentration of poor residents who live in poverty. We have to expand access, and we have to do it in a way that gets people out of the trenches of poverty that they're in.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mueller, what do you think about public transportation, and where would you rate it on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best?
I actually agree roughly with what my colleague said here, about a 3 to 4. Again, not the fault of our system. It's just how we invest in public transportation in our country. And so the federal funding doesn't make what we need to have a high quality service in areas that don't have the density like large cities on the coast. So we're hopeful that as we build transportation districts, we build density along transportation corridors, that will continue to build up the critical mass of ridership that can build better service on these routes. But in the meantime, we are going to have to look at making some sort of investments to figure out how do you reverse this trend where the worse the service is, the less people want to ride it, so you have fewer riders, and then the service is worse, so then it just keeps going. And you got to figure out how to make the right investments to try to reverse that trend and get us moving in the right direction again.
Thank you, sir. We are rapidly running out of time, folks. We are going to go to our final question right now before we go to closing statements. Here is the final question. What do you consider to be more pressing in the city of South Bend? Building new homes and commercial space, or rehabbing and better utilizing existing housing and buildings? Mayor Mueller, let's start with you.
Well, again, this is a false choice. We've got to do both, and that's what we're doing. We have resources for home repair and resources to rehabilitate existing structures. We want to save as many buildings as we can, especially because we know the cost of construction for new buildings is what it is these days. So we've got to do both, so I just, a lot of false choices, I think, being offered here, and we don't want to get stuck in those traps. So that's...
A little bit of both is your answer. All right, a lot of both. Councilman Davis, what do you think?
I wish you would have supported this when they thought to tear down 700 plus homes on the west side of South Bend and other areas. When those homes were demolished, they were demolished in a way that was as irresponsible as you could get. It poisoned people and it poisoned the soil in those areas. A lot of lead-based paint are in the soils in the city of South Bend. How do we get further with this discussion? How do we create better housing? We work with our housing authority. I keep going back to that. The fastest way that we could create affordable housing for our neighborhoods is with the federal government, HUD. He said it himself. He agrees with me. We have to employ some of our federal partners. And if we do not employ our federal partners, we're going to be stuck with working with private home developers. And I want to say that's not a bad thing, but if we're going to work with private home developers, we have to make it as sexy and as enticing as we can. As a matter of fact, we should be offering lots at no cost. We should be offering water hookups and sewer hookups at no cost. We need them here in South Bend, building and spending money and creating a better tax base for our community and our residents.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mayor, would you like a rebuttal on that one, or are you good?
Sure. I mean, the Housing Authority has come up a number of times here tonight, and Dr. Lamberg has taken over the Housing Authority a couple of years ago and is doing a great job. We have a great partnership with her, and we're working together closely to figure out how do we get the Housing Authority out of the rut that it's found itself in, decades of lack of investment. There was also an FBI raid in 2019, and some money went missing. So, how to figure out how to turn our housing authority is definitely high on our radar, and we have a great working relationship with Dr. Lambert.
Thank you, sir. All right, we are quickly running out of time already. So let's move to our closing statement. Each candidate has 30 seconds to make their case one more time. And again, both campaigns agreed on the order of closing statements. Mr. Mueller, you are first this time. You have 30 seconds, sir.
I know what it takes to be mayor, and I have a proven track record of getting things done. I'm running for re-election because South Bend is ready to reach new heights. Together, we will make our city a home where everyone can thrive, known as a safe, vibrant, and welcoming community. I humbly ask for your vote in the Democratic primary on or before May 2nd.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Davis, you have 30 seconds for your closing statement as well, sir.
Mayor Mueller has taken the promise, hope, and intention Mayor Pete built in South Bend and squandered it by selling out to wealthy out-of-towners. Now, you will hear Mayor Mueller say over and over again that isn't the case. But when he runs through his answers tonight, as he ran through his answers tonight, I think the crowd and the folks who are voting needs to figure out how have they benefited from what Mayor Mueller has done over the last 3 years. Does Mayor Mueller really care about your circumstances? Does he deserve another 3-4 years in office? My answer would be no. I'm running for the city of South Bend's mayorship so we can expand access, so we can create more opportunities, so we can get our school board and our school system back under some type of idea of growth. I'm running because crime is too high and we have not given a sufficient answer in answering crime.
Thank you. That was a little more than 30 seconds, however. Councilman Davis, Mayor Mueller, thank you very much for sharing your views on the future of South Bend with us and our viewers. Special thanks to Indiana University South Bend for hosting us here tonight in the Arts and Education Building. We also thank the debate sponsors, the League of Women Voters of the South Bend area, the American Democracy Project here at IU South Bend, with the support of the Political Science Club on campus as well. And special thanks to Dr. Elizabeth Bennion for all her efforts. A round of applause for the candidates, please. Don't forget, folks, the Indiana primary elections are set for May 2nd. That's a Tuesday. You can still register up to Monday, April 3rd, and early voting starts Tuesday, April the 4th. It's your voice, your vote. I'm Brian Conybeare, ABC 57. Thanks for watching.